Hi everyone, welcome to my new monthly lesson series on Western swing guitar. In this series we're going to take a look at Western swing rhythm guitar via Eldon Shamblin, learning tunes and their melodies and how we can use different common embellishments within them, as well as some lead kind of solo guitar style kind of around the style of Eldon Shamblin, of Junior Bernard, and Tiny Moore. And the first part, we're going to do a kind of a slow build-up of how to get this Eldon Shamblin style down, and a really theoretical kind of look at how these chords work and what's happening in the bass notes, how they're connecting to other chords, and how we can use them as fills, and so on and so forth. Now, if you've seen, I've got a lot of other lessons on Eldon Shamblin style on my channel, as well as 2 courses. Now, those are all very detailed. But this is going to be more geared towards an absolute beginner of trying to get these fundamental kind of cowboy chord shapes under our fingers and kind of really taking the time and patience of getting the resolutions and those different types of chord changes into our ears and the different sounds of how changes lead into one another. So a lot of this stuff we're going to apply to tunes eventually, but at first we're just kind of really going to be playing through chords slowly, listening to how they sound, and then resolving them into the other chords. So if you're interested in kind of, you think you've got that, or you watch this and some other stuff and you feel like you got it, go check out those courses. Now, if you're a monthly member and you haven't checked out the courses, I'm going to drop a coupon code for monthly members in our community chat so you can have that and go and check that out. If not, check it out either way, and there's a lot of great stuff in there regarding the style, a lot of the signature licks and fills, as well as arrangements of several of his rhythm guitar passages on popular Western swing standards. So in this first video, we're going to be just taking a basic D chord and resolving it into a G chord in several different ways. If you think of like our cowboy chord, our C chord, we're going to be using this C chord, but just as a D chord, right here. So you can kind of imagine if this is your C chord, fingered like so, we're just sliding it right up, and here we go. So within this chord we have D, F sharp, A, and D, and we're trying to resolve this to our G. So if we're thinking of the key of G, this is a basic 5-to-1 resolution. The D is our 5th note. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay? So we're looking now at the bass notes in this. So we have the D note, the C note, the B note, and the A note before we get to our G. Now what I would recommend doing is you're going to keep the top part of this chord, F sharp, A, and D. We're omitting the first string. We're going to keep that held down the entire time, and we're going to try and use our pinky as well as rearranging our fingers but keeping those notes held down to hit each one of those notes. So if I'm playing D here, I'm going to add in my D, and then I'm going to drop now down to my C. So what I'm going to do is bring my middle finger over to the C, then bring back my 4th and 2nd finger, and I've got D with the C in the bass. So that is going to be a certain type of chord we'll talk about here in a second, but a D with the C in the bass, right? And then I'm going to rearrange it now with the B in the bass. So now I have a bar with my first finger, and I've got this. We have B, F sharp, A, D, and then A in the bass with my pinky, and then I'm resolving to my G chord. So I would slowly work through that, right? Those are going to be your main sounds. So you're probably already, if you've played guitar for a while, obviously, you're looking at this and going, these kind of look like chords I already know. And they are, right? You got to start looking at chords as they're the same shape, but they serve multiple purposes depending on the context the chord's in. So there's this D chord. Hopefully you know that one. I'm going to skip this one real quick and go to the B in the bass, right? That looks like a B minor 7, right? That's because it is. But in this context, we're thinking D over B. Or if you want to be very fancy, D6, right? Because the B is the 6th of D, right? D, E, F sharp, G, A, B. And then we we just have a D with the A in the bass. So those are pretty simple, right? We know those shapes pretty well. Now this one's a little different because we have a C in the bass, and this makes it a D7, right? Because if this is our root, 1, D in the key or chord of D, that's the 1. The C sharp would be the major 7. The C would be the flat 7, right? So if we're emphasizing the flat 7, we now have a D7 chord. So within this progression, you have now a D, D7, B minor 7, D6, you choose. It's D to me. And then D with the A in the bass, resolve to G, right? So we've got this great note, this tension, this 7th, that wants to resolve to our G chord. And you do this all the time. If you're a rhythm player or whatever, you always, if you're playing cowboy chords, D, D7, back to G. It's this same idea. We're just kind of playing chords you probably don't play as often, right? So that's the idea, right? D, D7, D6, D, G. So that's our basic resolution, D, D7, G. Now let's see how we can like scoot some more D7 in there, right? So I've got these first 3 chords pretty much locked down. Now on this D with the A in the bass, I can add in and rearrange my hands and take the top part of the triad, right? F sharp, A, and D, and make it a D7 right here, right? F sharp, C, D. That's my closest D7 on the top part of the chord there. And then I just add in the bass, and I've got my D7, right? It's this chord, right? Kind of the Born on the Bayou chord. That's how I think of it. That's how I learned it originally. But you're just moving the root, the D, to the 5th, which is the A, right? And you now have 2 D7s in there to bring the tension even more so into the resolution. So now we have D, D7, D6, and then D7 with the A in the bass, and then G, all right? That's how we're getting right into that, okay? So that's kind of our basic pattern. Now we can take that and move it all around at all of our other Ds, right? And we'll do that in the following videos, but so what I would recommend to kind of get a leg up is start looking at all the other D cowboy chords open and closed position. Start looking at those bass notes. Find your root, your D, and then just working down, right? All of it revolves around going from the root of the bass note to the 5th of the bass note, right? Meaning D, go down to A, right? That's the 1, flat 7, 6, 5, resolve into the next chord. That's the basics. So get that, try and practice that on each one. Find your bass notes and resolve. And then what you do next is what I did with the upper part of the chord. You change that to match the tension you want to get into the next chord. And that's the basic idea of the 7ths, right? We go from this top part of the triad that's pretty stagnant the whole time to this D7, which gets us right to G, okay? So you can try that in the other positions. The next video, we'll talk about that at this G cowboy chord position right here, which is really impractical to play, but it is this cowboy open G chord, but fretted now with the D in the bass, and we'll do the same exact thing. So again, these are the building blocks of this style. I do a little bit of this in the choruses, but we're going to take some time and really hammer this out and just kind of get these resolutions and the theory, right? And the theory of what is a 7th resolution, what is a flat 7, how does that resolve into our 1 chord. So stick with it. For the YouTube, I'm gonna post a few ever so often, but if you wanna do this, check out my monthly membership lessons. I'm gonna have a link in the bio. It's $20 a month. You have access also to all of my past monthly lessons. So I just did a year of swing guitar and bebop guitar and looked at a bunch of different harmonic and melodic and soloing ideas. So you have all of that to work through too as well. Okay, so check that out. Links are in the bio, and I'll see you soon.